All right, hey, good evening, protectors. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. It's Thursday night, 7:30. Back with Coach Dustin, Coach Brad, and we're going to jump right into it here. I'll set it up. We'll kick to our intro. Tonight, we're going to talk about the four big dominoes. This is something that 30 years of training and teaching and weaponizing, and that's where this information came from. It's very powerful. It's critical. And so I'm going to share with you tonight the four big dominoes. Back in 30 seconds. Stay with us. Hey everybody, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Greg LaBeouf, and I'm sharing insights for how I went from the victim of a brutal attempted murder to weaponizing my mind and body, mastering the tool of violence so that I can protect myself and my family from violent criminal assault, and how for the past 30 years, I've been helping good people just like you do the same. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. All right, okay. First off, thanks for joining me, guys. It's nice to have you back again tonight. And this is going to be a little different because you guys probably didn't actually fully understand the direction that I'm going to go by the title alone, because this is something that I have just recently coined, and I haven't actually even explained the terminology to you guys, but you guys, having been around for 2+ decades, absolutely understand what I'm talking about. This is just a different piece of terminology to kind of frame it, to make it to build a framework to make it easier for other people to understand. And what I'm looking for tonight is, I think it'll be really neat because I want, again, I'm always looking for your visceral reaction, but this will be really interesting to see if this brings a different clarity for you guys as well. So it'll be a bit of a teaching podcast for me tonight, but I'm super looking forward to hearing your guys' feedback. So here, what are the four big dominoes? Why I kind of said that, listen, I've been doing this for 30 years, and of course, most people, if they've been listening to podcasts, understand my journey, what led me into this and weaponizing, and it was, of course, because I was the victim of a brutal attempted murder. I had been doing martial arts, all that kind of stuff, but I was completely defenseless. None of it. Violence is a whole different game, right? And so that experience and what it's like when people use the tool of violence, it's not a fight, it's not sport, it's completely different. But it started a journey for me because, I was mentally, emotionally, as well as physically destroyed. But it started this journey. And one of the things is, over 30 years, you get this ability because you walk this path. And I had to figure out how to weaponize, how to grow, how to do all this stuff. But as I look back over the 30 years, not only did this have to occur in my journey, but in every single person that I have taught that has achieved the same result that I've achieved, meaning that they have weaponized, they have become a protector, they have become weaponized, they are prepared, can and have faced violent criminal assault, and they have prevailed. They have dominated. They don't just survive, they thrive. And so it was interesting because I was doing a private, I don't know, a week ago or something like that. And I was explaining something. And again, this person had trained me in the past, had come back and was kind of just reintegrating back into the weaponizing process. And of course, this is probably 10 years later after they last trained. And it was very interesting to give them new software. But that's what got me thinking of the framework. Because every one of the concerns that this person had became, like, I recognized it instantaneously. And this is what I call, this became a domino. And why I use the term of the four big dominoes is this. There are universal problems, barriers, that if people do not solve, if I do not, or they do not, if people do not solve these problems, if they do not knock down these dominoes, then you can teach them all the skill. You can teach them the physical skill. You can teach them minds. You can do all this stuff. But when it becomes real, when they find themselves in a violent encounter, when shit gets real, rubber meets the road, they will not pull the trigger. They will not execute on what they know to do. Like they won't, it's not functional. And now what'll happen is, even if they do eventually pull the trigger, they'll hesitate. Because there's these 4 big dominoes that have to be answered. And of course, the power is control follows awareness. This is a very important thing for people to understand. You cannot control what you are not aware of. So in the process of training people, of giving them the physical skills and even the mindset and all the stuff, in the process of weaponizing them, as instructors, if you don't understand what these 4 big dominoes are, what these 4 core problems are, or beliefs that these people, if you don't solve these problems purposefully, if you don't knock them over, then there is like a barrier that still exists there. And no matter how much training you do on the other side of those barriers will stop people from seamlessly pulling the trigger or pulling the trigger at all. They'll either hesitate or they will simply freeze. Does that make sense, what I'm kind of driving with? And we've had lots of conversations surrounding this kind of thing. I just never had a full framework for it. And this framework, like I said, I'm going to share with you tonight. So that's the concept behind the 4 big dominoes. So anybody listening to this right now, you have to solve these problems. And I'm going to share with you how I can help you do that. And, for free, by the way. That's how important these are. I'm going to share with you how I can help you solve these for free. But I first am just going to explain what these big dominoes are, and then I'm going to get, these guys are going to give me their reactions on this. And again, when you guys hear this, it'll make complete sense to you, and you'll get it, right? But let's start here. Domino number 1. The first big problem that people have to solve, that they might not even know they need to solve, is they have to recognize that they do not speak the language of violence. Okay, they don't speak the language of violence. Now, why this is important is because, and I'm not going to spend that much time on this, because in this podcast, we are documenting, we are, putting on every week, we're talking about this and helping people to understand the language of violence. I mean, that's like, go back to episode number 1 and start listening. And you will start to solve this problem. And the reason that we're doing this is because this is one of the big dominoes. People have to start understanding the language of violence. Now imagine, again, I use this analogy all the time, but if I end up in Russia and I don't speak Russian and everybody is speaking in Russian, I mean, it's going to be challenging. Now you might think like, listen, if all I'm trying to do is order some food, yeah, that can be challenging, that can be annoying. But at the end of the day, we're probably going to get it worked out. I probably will not starve to death. But if there's a fucking crisis and there are things that I need to understand with any type of urgency, because failure to understand these in a timely manner could result in death or serious injury, it's a real fucking problem. Violence is its own language. And many people, they don't understand that, because the paradigms that the world puts forward to us is all fighting. It's competition. It's the art of fighting. And very few people really get the context of violence, true violence. Okay, now again, like this is what we've been addressing on the podcast since it began and even before that. But just visually, like, would you guys agree or disagree that, again, I could teach someone and I can teach them the strategy, tactics, and the tools, but if they don't actually understand, if they don't come to accept, if they don't recognize and accept that violence is different, they will continue, no matter what strategy, tactics, and tool we teach them, they will take it and they will filter it through the perception of, or the paradigm of sport or fighting, and they will continue to translate it that way because that's the only language they speak. Does that make sense? So would you guys agree that as domino number 1 is a massive problem, people have to fundamentally begin to understand the language of violence?
Absolutely. And it's like if they don't have their filter set right, like what you're saying, it gets lost in translation and doesn't come out the same way on the other end.
Yes. And that is literally the perfect way to say it. It gets lost in translation and it gets altered. And so it does not come out on the other end the way that it needs to come out. Okay, 100%. Dustin, I'm sure you're going to just agree with that. And like I said, we've addressed this a lot. Yeah. Anything on this part?
The only thing I would add is I think, too, that if you don't speak the language of violence, you're at so much more risk of being caught off guard as to what it really is. You know, how toxic, corrosive, septic it is. Yeah. If you don't understand that, yeah, you're going to have no capability to deal with it because you're going to literally be in shock.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. You go into shock, you get overwhelmed. Like, I mean, line familiarization. Like, we've always heard this, and we've always been taught that there's two ways. Ultimately, there's two ways that you lose a violent altercation. One is you run out of gas. Like, you simply are so physically depleted, mentally depleted, emotionally depleted, or all of the above, that you just become like dried kindling. Like the smallest spark, you just burn up. So the second you run out of fuel, mentally, emotional, spiritual, physical fuel, you're fucking done. Okay? And the second way is that someone fights you from a line you're unfamiliar with. Now, most people think of that of like, oh, kicking, punching, clinching, and ground. Like, I've never done any ground fighting. I'm a stand-up fighter and I get taken in the ground and I lose. Yes, that can happen. But violence is different than sport. And that's what Dustin's saying. If you don't understand, it's like, you know how many people think that if they ended up, let's say your house is on fire. Now, most people see that in one of two ways. They see, like, they wake up and their house is full of smoke, and maybe there's some flames in the kitchen, and they open their bedrooms, they get their kids, they shuffle out, they get out the front door, and the firefighters show up, and whatever. Most people don't understand how fast the fire goes. Every year at Christmas, this is, right now we're in October, coming up in November. Every year at Christmas, you ever see the firefighters demonstrate a Christmas tree burning up? And they have, like, the fake half house, and they have a Christmas tree in there, and they light the spark hits the Christmas tree, a dried out Christmas tree. And every year, I mean, people are shocked at how fast that fucking thing goes up. And it's not just the tree that goes up. It's the tree, it's the roof, it's the walls, it's the curtains, it's the couch. Fire's dangerous, you know what I mean? And most people, like, they would be shocked if they woke up and their house was on fucking fire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they'd open the door, and people think, like, oh, the flames are right there, but you could run by them. People do not understand how intense the heat of a house fire can be. You know what I mean? And so to me, it's like firefighters get it, but the average person in our minds, we fantasize it. We've seen movies where they cover their face a bit and they run through the flames. And it's like, oh, there's no smoke inhalation, there's no burns from the heat, there's no blistering, there's no pain. Like, you get what I'm saying, right? Violence is like that. So that first big dominoes, people have to rebuild the filter to truly understand and start speaking the language of violence. Brad, you got something you want to throw?
No, I was just going to talk about the fire thing and like that analogy. It's like my father-in-law used to be a fire inspector, and forget what the rate is, but it's like a fire doubles in size like every 10 to 15 seconds or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But with that analogy, even, it's almost like, so does violence.
Yeah.
We communicate and double just as quickly, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's just trying to give people a different example of why. And again, we're not talking anything to do with how to use the strategy, tactics, and tools. We're literally talking about your understanding. Like, understand that it is its own language, and that it requires specificity. Like, you have to. Again, one of my favorite saying is, you don't learn about violence by studying competition or by studying the art of fighting, like a martial art. You learn it by studying criminality. And it's just such a simple thing that most people are like 100%. Yet most people are in dojos and in gyms studying the art of fighting. Like gladiators, like competition, one-on-one, techniques, man versus man. And it's like criminality has nothing to do with that. And so that's the first domino, is that filter has to shift, right? And one of the ways, I'm going to give you another way, like I said, I'm going to help people solve all four of these big dominoes, but we are doing that every week with our podcast, is we're trying to educate people and help them start to understand the language of violence. So that's big domino number one. We're not going to push that one any further. We're going to move to the second one because, like I said, we address this one lots. Number two, the second big domino that acts as a barrier or is a problem that has to be solved before somebody will actually pull the trigger, regardless of how many years they've been training, how much skill, how much strategy, tactics, and tools they develop. And that is the understanding of the realities of your right to self-defense here in Canada, the legal right to self-defense in Canada. If you listen to the podcast and you're outside of Canada, then within your country, right? Does this make sense? Again, 30 years of doing this, and I had this exact same problem. And I'll tell you why this is so true. I'll just use myself as a great example, and you guys tell me if this applied to you or not. But when I started training, I did not, in the beginning of weaponizing, as I was learning the strategy, tactics, and tools of violence, as I was beginning to learn to understand the language of violence and speak the language of violence, I was probably 6, 7 years into my training, into my development as a protector, before I even really became consciously aware or did any study of the actual legalities of self-defense here in Canada. Which means that for 7 years or so, give or take, and I know this is true, I actually had a lot of confusion. I had a lot of misinformation. I had a lot of fear around actually using any of the skills that I was being taught, that I was training. Now, I always in my mind painted this really bad situation where it's like, well, if this happened, well then of course I don't give a fuck about, and there's all the cliche sayings, right? It's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6, which is all just macho bullshit talk for saying, I don't have a fucking clue what the law is, and this is how I'm masking it with macho, bravado, sayings like this. You know what I mean? Like, get it on a t-shirt, but make sure the t-shirt is 2 sizes too small so that my muscles look big, right? Then it's believable. I don't give a fuck. Better be judged by 12 than carried by 6. If you actually understand what the real case law, what the courts in our country have ruled in cases of self-defense. So who cares? It's not just about what's written in the law books. What has case law? What have the courts ruled on? What is the precedent? Because they are telling us through their rulings what is legal and how we can approach self-defense in this country. And if you do that and you educate and you understand this, you solve this problem, that domino falls because you actually fucking understand what your rights are. And when you understand what your rights are, you can stand on your rights. You know what I mean? But most people, their rights, because they don't fucking know. They don't really fucking know. They think what they know is fact when it's not. It's false evidence that appears real, or somebody told them something, or they fucking heard something. Right? That becomes a hindrance. And if you think that that's not in the back of your mind, when you have rude, inappropriate, aggressive, or violent people fucking with you, you are crazy. And I know because I fucking felt it. It was always a concern of mine, no matter how much I suppressed it and used hyperbole and spouted off all these cliche fucking things to mask the fact that I didn't really have a fucking clue what my legal rights are. How does that hit you guys? And were you like me into your journey? Because again, you guys have been around for 2+ decades. I mean, you guys are around at the early stage when we weren't directly addressing this. We didn't have a great source for this, but you were also around when we solved this problem and tumbled this domino over.
Yeah, I started the exact same way you did, so no point repeating it verbatim.
Yeah.
But 100% I did. I think an interesting thing with this one to me is it's almost like how if you get a negative comment, it takes like 17 positive comments to kind of flush it out.
Yeah.
I feel like that's similar with this because you can tell people, oh yeah, no, you absolutely have the right to self-defense in Canada. And people will be like, oh yeah, no, I get it intellectually.
Yep.
But then there's that, yeah, but. And I think it's similar in the way it's like, because everybody's heard a story where somebody should have been okay in what they did and the way they responded because someone broke in their house, but the homeowner somehow ended up getting convicted. And that's the one that sticks in your brain. And so you can hear 15 examples of when it was okay and self-defense was defended, it was a right. Then you hear one where somehow it was something got screwed up, it got denied, and that's the one that sticks with you. And so I think with this, it does require a ton of study because there is some pushback. Even though we intellectually understand we have that right, there's a lot of pushback, I think, for most people. I mean, we train morally good, decent people. And so they come in being like, well, can I? Are you sure? You know what I mean? So yeah, I think this is a huge one that requires you need a lot of legs under that table to really start to believe something that is law. But yeah, we have a lot of pushback.
100%. Brad.
Yeah, I agree, and I could echo the misunderstandings and misconceptions that we've all heard of and that happen out there. And the only thing that I think I'll add to it is that it's part of the work. You know, it's part of the work that I think a lot of people miss, and they just lean on secondhand information that is kind of just like, oh, I heard from my friend's cousin's uncle's brother. You know what I mean? Where it's like, he's a cop, and he said this, and they take it as law. But like, I agree 100%. It's one of the dominoes and the massive one that people need to understand, because it is definitely opens up the floodgates to actually use the strategies and tactics to defend yourself and your family efficiently to the best of your capabilities with no psychic hindrances. So it's part of the work, but I believe it's part that people will just brush off to the wayside and be like, yeah, no, whatever, I'll cross that bridge. You know what I mean? Like, kind of gets swept under the rug.
Well,
right.
And see, this is why I wanted to do this and address this on the podcast, because again, like what you're saying about how people brush under whatever, what I'm saying and what we do is that not only, this has to be these four big dominoes actually need to come on the front end.
Yes.
They are these four dominoes. Matter of fact, what I'm saying to people and what I'm setting up and what I'm doing and what I've been working on for the last 2 years, maybe 3 years, is developing programs using the resources, using my knowledge, the knowledge of some of my instructors and mentors and experts in the field and stuff, to put together programs that solve each of these, right? So I'll talk more about the end, but specifically right now to the legalities of it, I'm not a lawyer. This is not my field of expertise. So we outsource that. You outsource that to somebody who is an authority on the subject matter, somebody who has spent and dedicated a tremendous part of their life, not only through service to the country, working as military police, dealing with legalities in court cases, whatever, was a special forces operator who has written a book about it, who travels around Canada teaching courses on it. Matter of fact, this is who lawyers call, and even judges are lawyers, judges, and police officers are using this gentleman's book. They're using his courses as a reference guide, and they're saying to their own families, when they come to them, Daddy's a judge, Grandpa's a judge. What are my rights when it comes to self-defense? He says, go read or get this book, go take this course. This is the resource. And of course, we're talking about Mr. Barry Holland, and we're talking about the book that he wrote, which is called No More Mr. Nice Guy, which is the definitive guide to how to protect yourself, family, and property from violent criminal assault here in Canada. And that is who we use as well. That is our reference point. That is our source. And so we have, we use his training methodology, his courses. We use his, he is who we go to. And of course, then he has his network of people that he also is constantly adapting and updating as, of course, Canadian law can change and new cases are being tried and new case precedent is being set. And I'm not going to go into all the details other than to say, then that right there is what we do. But that is information that we put on the front end. That is stuff we say, listen, okay, here's what you're doing. Before even we get into strategies, tactics, and tools, before we get into all that stuff, you got to start understanding, we're going to change your filter, understand the language of violence. We are going to attack the second big domino, which means we're going to educate you. We're going to give you all the resources. We are going to help you. We're going to take you by the hand. We're going to help guide you through and navigate all of this misinformation and say, what are the realities of self-defense in Canada? And that is that second domino. And imagine what happens, because here's the thing. I don't have to imagine. I know from firsthand experience that the second that I started, that Barry started helping me understand how self-defense really works, right? How, the certainty that came from that changed the game. I know that feeling. I've seen it in you guys when that same switch was flipped. And for 30 years, I know now when someone comes in that one of the first things I got to do, get them speaking the language of violence, and I got to get them to begin the journey of understanding and getting that certainty and empowerment from knowing what the realities are of self-defense here in Canada. So that's the second domino. That's a huge one. Okay? Now the third domino is somewhat related to this. Of course, they're all interconnected, but here's the third one, and I want to make sure that you see, I know you guys will get the difference, but I want to make sure I articulate it well. But here's the third one. The third domino is that people cannot read the signs of violence. They cannot read the signs of violence. Now, listen, how this is connected to the legalities, you have to understand what the laws are. What is case precedent? What is the law? But that is, and there's an extension of, even if you know the law and you know how it can and should be applied legally to defend ourselves, what are my rights? In life, as you're living your life, you have to read the fucking signs as they're coming at you. Shit's happening real time. And the easiest analogy I have for this is driving a vehicle. It's like if I ask both you guys, but this is true, but let me just say this. Let's use all three of us. All three of us have the skills to drive a vehicle. We go to a giant open parking lot. Somebody sets up pylons. There's a serpentine. There's a parallel park. There's left turns, right turns, stops, starts, reverses. All of it. We all, no fucking problem. We all have the skills and capability to drive the vehicle. Now, we all have gone through driver training. We all have gone through licensing. We've taken our tests. We have been given that little piece of plastic, laminated plastic, that says, I am legally authorized to operate this motor vehicle. But imagine for 1 second if I took out one quality. You got the physical skills to drive the car, you got the license to drive the vehicle, but you do not understand, nor can you read or interpret any of the road signs, any of the traffic signal lights. None of that. You don't understand a fucking clue. What's going to happen? What is inevitable?
You're gonna break the law.
You're going to break the law, and you're probably going to get in a fucking accident. Right? Like, it's inevitable. Because, see, the sequencing on a light, a green light doesn't just turn red randomly. It goes from green to
Yellow
to
red.
Yellow.
So you can interpret that. Green to yellow to red. Right? What does it mean when you have double solid lines or a solid line down the middle of the road versus a broken line? What is it? You know what I mean? Like, just because you can drive the car, just because now I get that to earn the license, you had to prove you understood the signage. But if we separate just that one piece out, what I'm getting at, you might know how to fucking elbow and headbutt and do arm bars and everything else. You might have gotten belts. You might have certifications that say you have this type of skill level and all this type of shit. But if you can't read body language, if you can't interpret behavior, if you can't understand interpersonal communication and you don't understand the system of measuring, how that goes from trigger to escalation to crisis, if you don't understand any of that, you are literally out there with all these skills. You're out there with this capability. You're out there even certified, or you got your belts and your trophies or whatever the fuck you got, but you do not understand how to read the signs of violence. And here's the thing. Good people are terrified of making the wrong fucking decision. Now, two things, right? Domino number two is you got to understand the realities of the legal, of self-defense here in Canada. You got to understand the realities of that, right? But here's the thing. You need that because people are terrified of getting in trouble. Nobody wants legal trouble. If I get charged with fucking aggravated assault or attempted murder, or who knows what the fuck I get charged with, right? You know what I mean? Bodily injury and the commission of whatever the fuck I get charged with. I don't want to lose my fucking job. I don't want to not be able to leave the country. I don't want the bad press, all this fucking shit. So I don't want to get into legal trouble. But there's another side of that coin. And they're like, I don't want to make a wrong decision. I don't want to fucking hurt somebody that truly didn't deserve it. You know what I mean? And that terrifies people. And it's like when I was doing a different private at one guy, and we were talking about, we were at the stage where we're showing him strategies, tactics, and tools, and I could just see it in his mind every time. He just would not pull the trigger. He would hesitate before he did something, and just very quickly I was like, "What's the hesitation?" And I had told him, "Here's what I'm doing. Here's the cues that I'm presenting," which already told him this is lethal force. You are justified because I'm presenting this body language, crisis phase, this behavior, crisis phase, and this interpersonal communication, crisis phase. You have 3 different areas of measurement that all tell you that it is reasonable for you to believe that I am a imminent grievous bodily harm or danger or threat of death to you. You know what I mean? And he wouldn't pull the trigger. And I kept saying, what is going on? So even though he knew how I was feeding him, he knew the signs, he was scared that he was going to make the wrong choice. And I was like, right away, it's like, but I'm not only did I show you, but I've also articulated to you. And he's like, yeah, but every time you feed it, although, yeah, those elements are there, you're feeding it different each time. Same threat level, but what was I doing different each time? If I told you right now that there's 15 different body language cues, from the chin to the eyes to the mouth, to the shoulders, to the head positioning, to the hips, to the weight distribution, to the hand placement. If there's 15 different body language cues, in one scenario, one approach to him, I was using 3 of them. In a next approach, I was using 3 different ones. In the next approach, I was using 5, some different, some new. Does that make sense? But when I changed them, even though all 15, I knew they were in crisis mode. I knew they all led to this. It's all one road. It's all, 15 different roads that all head to the same conclusion. He did not. And what was causing him stress and hesitation was he wasn't sure if I had changed one and now that changed his justification. He was terrified to make a wrong decision. So we immediately stopped what we were doing and went back and did what? We did an entire private on the aggression continuum. And me showing him, there's more than this. I'm just using easy numbers for people to understand. I showed him the 15 body language, behavior, and communication measurement pieces that were triggered low. No justified use of force. They would be more found in antisocial aggression. I showed him the 15, or let's say the 7, that were in low escalation. Once again, no justification for lethal force. And then the 7 that showed high escalation, which started to get you prepped for lethal force. And then the 15 that told you imminent grievous bodily harm or death are now here, take immediate action or face the consequences. And in one session of me not explaining it, writing it out, showing him the chart that we have, giving him the framework, and then role playing every single one of those multiple times. And by the end, I could mix and match the cues. And he was able to read it. And what do you think happened in the next private? When he got to go home and work that and revisit that and allow that to absorb, what started to happen? What disappeared first and foremost?
Well, hesitation would have disappeared, and certainty in his actions, and the ability to make a decision under stress.
Yes. Because he was no longer afraid of making the mistake. Mm-hmm. See, he knew his legal rights. Like, we went through that. Like, so, yes, he still had to anchor that a bit more, and he had to connect them. But he knew that he was justified when X, X, and X appeared. He's like, yes, I'm justified. That's imminent grievous. I'm justified. But then when I was feeding it, he's like, holy fuck, that's overwhelming. There's body language, and there's multiple cues, and then there's communication, and you're yelling, and there's proximity, and there's lighting. And he goes, holy fuck, man. Like, I wasn't sitting there in my brain thinking about, I'm legally justified, law number this, section 8 of the criminal code says this. Like, you're not in that. You know that. But in this moment, I'm like, I don't even know if I believe what I'm seeing. Am I reading it right? I don't want to fucking make a mistake. And isn't that indicative of good people? Mm-hmm. Good people don't want to make a mistake. Even when we're mad, we recognize, fuck, I was so mad. I'm so glad I didn't act on that, because the regret, hardest time you're ever going to do is when you do something that's not in accordance with your conscience. When you do something where you're like, fuck it, I believed, 100% believed with all sincerity that I was within my legal rights to do what I did. And not only that, in addition to that, I know what I fucking saw. I was there. I saw the signs, and I know the signs. I did not make a mistake. This was asocial violence by predators or individuals, whether they meant to or didn't fucking mean to, that were putting me in a situation where imminent grievous bodily harm or death that's what I was fucking facing, me and my family. And when you know, like you fucking know, like you know that you're reading it fucking right, and you know that you stand on your legal system, which is not perfect, but you stand on that, understanding case law and precedent, right? You like those dominoes have to fall. Because you can see how you can have the greatest elbows and all the knife work and all the everything you want, but in the back of your mind, if those first three dominoes that we've talked about, the language of violence, understanding the real, legal realities of self-defense in Canada, and knowing how to read the fucking signs. If those three dominoes have fallen and you have that certainty and that confidence, you'll pull the trigger when and if it is legally and morally justified. No hesitation. But if even one of them is still standing, you'll hesitate, or you will not do it at all. That's why we always say people will benefit of the doubt themselves to death. And that's where that benefit of the doubt comes from. It's not just that they're morally good people. It comes from uncertainty. It comes from one of these three dominoes is still standing. And the fourth domino, the fourth and final domino, is people simply, they lose fucking control in crisis. They lose control of themselves. People, we have not been taught how to truly regulate our sympathetic nervous system under survival conditions, under the stress of lethal conditions. Unless you've had specialized training from somewhere, military or otherwise, most people do not develop a natural predisposition. It absolutely does happen. Some people do. They grow up in tough neighborhoods, tough households, crisis, struggle is part of their life, and they learn to fucking regulate. They learn to develop the coping mechanisms. They develop a mental fortitude and emotional intelligence. It does happen for people, of course. But for the great majority of people, we're blessed. We live in a first world country, which means that we don't fight for our survival. And yes, there's tons of poverty, tons of adversity, tons of struggle, but for so many people, they don't face that, and therefore they have never really learned how to regulate their response, meaning regulate their thoughts, their emotions, their physiology, and therefore their actions. And so they lose control. Now imagine how, if you don't understand how to regulate stress, anxiety, fear, if you don't understand that, even just in regular life, what we call the fook of life, the fear, the uncertainty, the chaos, the erraticness of just day-to-day fucking life, never mind violent encounters, what do you think happens to your understanding of how to read to the other three dominoes? What your understanding of how to read body language cues, interpersonal communication? What happens to your knowledge and certainty of the legalities and your legal rights to defend yourself, or even your ability to filter and truly understand the language of violence and see it for what it is and recognize that shit? Well, if you lose control, probably nothing fucking matters, does it? So what has your guys' experience been with the fourth domino of in your own training, as well as in your teaching and seeing people and having to make sure that you are giving them that ability to regulate very early on, that domino's got to fall?
Yeah, I think for me, feeling like the firsthand experience of learning it, just on how, again, it reduces hesitation, it increases clarity in action, and more so in conviction. Because as you're regulating your response, or as I'm regulating my response, I'm able to still conduct myself with the other three dominoes in the forefront. You know what I mean? And it's like, we've had how many people come in, but I just black out, like that old saying. And it's like, well, that's not a positive, and it's like, oh, I'm a badass. I'll just black out, and at the end of the day, the guy's done, and I'm whatever. And it's like, well, that's not a positive, because that doesn't address any of the dominoes. Yeah. And that isn't defending yourself in this country. It's more likely to be assaulting somebody in this country.
Yeah.
Right. So again, like it's I'm looking at all these, and yes, it's all stuff that we've been through and we've talked about and we've educated ourselves on and shared a lot of. But with the framework that you're showing, I'm like, oh yeah, it's very interesting on how they're so harmonious
Yeah. Yeah.
and just so interconnected. And it's like, yeah, like thinking about it in terms of the dominoes, it's like, absolutely. Because every domino, every concern is going to fall into one of these four areas.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I think violence, one thing violence does is it just magnifies things that are already in our lives. So in this case, you touched on the idea of stress and just day to day life. And you hear people say, like, oh, yeah, stress kills. Like, stress will make you sick. Stress will put you in the hospital. Like, stress can mess you up. Well, violence is just stress on steroids. Like, so just like in everyday life where you have to, whether it's meditation or yoga or breath work or whatever it is you do to try to mitigate, exercise, whatever you're doing in day-to-day life to try to mitigate stress and deal with that. Well, it's no different and obviously 10 times more important in violence. If you don't have the ability to regulate the emotions, your sympathetic nervous system in the face of violence, like you're in trouble. Like, talk about stress killing, or putting you in the hospital. Well, that's what violence is going to do, like, right quick.
Yeah.
So I think this domino is huge. And then, like you talked about, we're not, we're fortunate we live in a first world country, but the unfortunate side of that is, yeah, we're not as resilient.
No, yeah.
As people who grow up way tough, and some people do in our country obviously grow up super tough because they have much harder lives. But
Yeah.
like you said, en masse, there's the expression, oh, first world problems. Well, that expression exists for a reason.
Yeah. 100%.
Because the majority of us, that's what we're dealing with day to day is just first world problems.
Yeah.
It's not that struggle to feed your kids and have a warm home for them in the middle of winter, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
so we're not naturally resilient from our lifestyle.
Yeah.
In our society. So we're not prepared for it. So that's why this one is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. Okay. Let me give you guys just a hypothetical, because this is just I just want people to see it from the context in which, why I wanted to share this framework. If I had two guys, and Dustin, you're going to get one of the guys, and Brad, you're going to get one of the guys, and you're going to take them through our weaponizing process. And so both guys, prior to starting, I said to one guy, okay, listen, I want you to take, here's the four dominoes. Now, I don't have to know you, but here's what I know. After 30 years of doing this, you're a good person, right? If you're a good person, here's what I know. There's four things that are going on within you that we have to address, these dominoes. And I introduced it to him. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to take this little workshop. And it's only about an hour, but I want you to take this workshop, and what it's going to do is it's going to create a framework in your mind that acts like a filter, and it's going to introduce you to the differences of violence. Like, what is the language of violence? And it's going to start laying a little bit of a foundation for this filter so that you can start to actually understand that the language of violence is different and that it exists. And the guys are going, oh, okay, that sounds good. So I put him through this course. Now he takes the course, he invests the hour, and maybe, I talk to him, say, how was that? And he's like, no, it's really good. As a matter of fact, though, I'm actually going to go through it a couple more times because, of course, there's information there, and I just want to process. So he spends a couple days, and over 3 or 4 days, he listens to it 2 or 3 times. Okay, so perfect, he does that. Then I say to him, okay, perfect. Now what I want you to do is I'm going to offer you, I'm going to give you this book, and I'm going to offer you this course. And this course is going to take this book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And you're going to read through this book, very easy to read, laid out in layman's terms, and it's going to introduce you and educate you on case law in Canada. But I'm also going to give you this course that is No More Mr. Nice Guy beyond the book, where I have taken 5-6 hours, sat down with Mr. Holland personally, and had him go through every aspect of the book, all the critical pieces, and in his own words and with different stories, reiterate and give different examples, but detailed examples of how this case law is applied and how we use self-defense here in Canada, what our legal rights are. And so, and at the end of the day, that, 6 hours probably got whittled down, and it's probably, I think, a 2.5 to 3 hour course with the book, and you go through it, and you have access to that, and you can go through that and listen to it as many times as you want. So he's like, oh, that's amazing. So he sits down, he goes through it, he's highlighting his book, he's listening to the course. Every time he's driving to work or he's exercising, he's listening to the audio of that course, and he's hearing from one of the foremost experts in Canada on self-defense. He's understanding and building the framework of what is real. He actually has case law that he can cite. Not the friend of a friend whose brother's a cop said. Real shit. And so he goes through and does that. Now we're about 7 or 8 days into this. And then I say, okay, listen, that's awesome. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you this course that's going to teach you how to read the road signs, how to read the warning signs of violence, the body language, what are all the different cues, at what levels. I'm going to give you the system that measure, and I'm going to give you this course. And you can go through the 16 different videos that is going to set up and help you understand everything from your intuition and how the wild brain and the logical brain, how they battle out to try to block you from seeing the signs, and then how to actually read from trigger escalation to crisis and where it's demonstrated to you, and have him watching this. And he goes through this, and after it, I say, that'll take you, 16 videos, half an hour videos, whatever. It's going to take you 6-7 hours, but you go through it. He spends a week with that, and he goes through it and he spends a week with it. And he's like, yeah, that was crazy. Like, I just, I'm not going to remember everything, but these key points, like, this makes sense. And I've seen this. Why? Because as human beings, we're very good at reading other human beings. We just have to kind of direct it in the context of violence. And so he's super pumped. And then the final course, I say to him, listen, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you in 5 days, a 5-day course, this Bulletproof Mind course. We call it the 5-day Prime the Protector. And each day, one a day, I'm going to show you different strategies that'll instantaneously help you start managing and gaining control over your mindset, your emotions, your physiology, and your actions. And so each day, day 1, he goes through. Day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. He goes through, and each day he has tangible, instantly applicable coping mechanisms, strategies, tools, goes through the workbook every day. In 5 days, by the end of the 5th day, he has a completely different routine. Morning routine, afternoon, how to check in, observe, and report. He has all these different tools. Now, he's not doing this course 100%. It's his first time going through it. But over the 5 days at the end of it, he's got 30% better strategies, 30% better coping mechanisms, 30% better ability to control emotions and thought and actions, 30% better than those 5 days. And all told, all invested into this, were about 3 weeks. And after doing that, after that 3 weeks, and the other guy said, listen, unfortunately, Brad can't see you for 3 weeks. And the guy's like, hey, no problem. I'm busy at work. I'm busy at school, all this type of stuff. I got wife, kids, blah, blah, blah. I'll be there on this date 3 weeks from now. Perfect. Dustin's guy's like, I'll be there that day 3 weeks from now too. But what I'm going to do is take 40 minutes each day, 45 minutes each day, and I'm going to do this work. I'm going to go through these 4 courses. And so for 30 to 40 minutes a day, 45 minutes a day, he goes through over 3 weeks 4 of these courses as I've outlined them. Then at the end of it, they show up. And now you begin the training. Which guy do you guys want and why? I already kind of said Brad gets the guy with nothing, but that's not necessarily true. I'm open now to hearing your arguments for who gets who.
Gee, thanks.
Let's not backtrack. We've already decided who Brad gets, and I don't want that guy. That's why he's Brad.
Yeah.
That's all right. I'm up for a challenge.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a big hill. Yeah, because I mean, obviously, with that kind of foundation, I mean, you're going to be leaps and bounds ahead when just having that kind of understanding of these 4 dominoes, which essentially is what those courses do. Yep. Is it knocks down these dominoes. So I mean, it's going to be night and day. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, oh, I'm going to teach you how to read, but I'm going to give you the benefit of knowing the alphabet, but I'm not going to give Brad that benefit. Yes. Good luck. Yeah. Right. Same thing.
100%. Now here's the thing before Brad jumps into this, right? Because there's 2 things. If I expanded this out, if I set a stipulation that from the day they start training with you in person, you cannot address any of the 4 dominoes. You can simply teach them strategy, tactics, and tools. So you can teach them the Trojan horse, the flashbangs. You can teach them the smash and grabs. You can teach them all the elbows, all the knife work, all the ground fighting. You can teach them all that shit. But you cannot address any of the 4 dominoes. You cannot talk to them about their legal right to self-defense. You cannot educate them on how to read the body language cues. You cannot help them build a filter for what the difference between violence and sport is and why. And you cannot teach them any tools for self-control other than what automatically and naturally occurs within the training. What is going to happen after, you can just go 2 months into advance, but go 6 months in advance, go 10 years into advance. What's going to happen? What's the struggle, Brad? What do you know about your guy, Brad?
Well, let me just back up a second, because you're weaponizing a completely different individual, right, from the beginning. And then to go forward through that, right, the guy that has had the 4 dominoes knocked down, everything that he does from that point in time is going to have passion and purpose behind it and understand it, right? But the guy that I have the luxury of working with,
the not so pleasure.
There's like some flashback in my head is exactly like what we talked about tonight. It's like, oh, you show him a strategy, but that strategy doesn't fit into the overall framework. Like, obviously there's a framework within the strategies, tactics, tools that we work with people on, but it doesn't fit into their understanding of the big picture. And for that, this person down the road is always going to be lacking. They're always going to have some level of uncertainty and unclarity. And that is just, if you can never share that information with them along their journey, I'll tell you what, if you can never share that information, and if people have an opportunity to train and they never have this information shared with them, it is fucking negligent. Mm-hmm. Period.
Yep. Yeah, because you know that their confidence, like you just said, their confidence, their certainty is never going to be full. They're never going to be whole. And the odds of them actually pulling the trigger at the wrong time, in the wrong way, in the wrong place, is very high, because they're not reading the signs. Because they don't understand their legal rights. They don't have control over themselves. So they're going to face antisocial aggression where they should walk away, and their ego and their emotion, their lack of emotional intelligence is going to get them convicted. It's going to get them tried and convicted. It's going to have them living for the rest of their life with the regret that they seriously injured, if not killed, an innocent person, or maybe not such a great person in that moment, but he was innocent and didn't deserve that. Like, all of these things are going to happen.
See, I just had a scenario kind of pop in my head as we're talking about this, and it was like, when I said it was negligent, what if the individual lived and his wife and kid died?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's how negligent, like, it is not to have this information on the front end, and how serious, like, even thinking about it, I could feel the emotions bubbling up, because it's like, that's how critically important these dominoes are.
Yes, 100%. And Dustin, I think on your end, I mean, again, you're going to feel the exact opposite emotions of it. But what do you know about everything that you teach them from the day they start, all the strategy, all the tactics and tools? What do you know about that? Like, what gives you as an instructor? Because Brad's using the word negligent, which I 100% agree with, and we use it a lot because it's very powerful. When you're talking about teaching people how to defend their lives, there is a responsibility, a moral responsibility to the best of your ability, empower them in the totality of what that means to protect themselves and family. You have to do it and take on that responsibility as if their life and the lives of their families depend on it, because it does. Mm-hmm. Right? So how do you feel? What's the opposite of that you're experiencing?
Yeah, I mean, it gives that reference point, right? It's like Brad said, it gives them the passion and the purpose to every single thing that comes out of your mouth from that point forward, because now everything is tied back to one of or multiple of those dominoes. It's what's going to start to let them build that belief in everything you're saying, because as we've talked about in previous podcasts, like, you're only ever going to do what you believe will work and what you believe you can actually do. Well, how do you start to believe something will work if you have no context for how it's supposed to be used?
Yeah.
Like Brad said, you give someone a strategy, but they just don't have any context as to where, how, when, why. Is it legal? Is it moral? Is it not? It's impossible. So you're just climbing up an impossible hill.
Yeah.
So I think that's the kind of that's the reference point that it gives that individual going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just going to throw up a couple comments we had here from Leftover Candy. One, it said it would be almost impossible to teach them the how to do something if they didn't know why they're doing it. And then he followed that up with, and even if you did teach them the how, it wouldn't sink in because when they're under pressure, they just revert back to whatever they truly believe will work or just freeze, I suppose, which is exactly what your comment just was, Dustin. And that is true. And that is why, I'll just make a quick point. How many times, how many self-defense courses are being taught every single day? How many were taught today around the world? How many are going to be taught in the next week, the next month, the next year, where all they did was teach them physical strategy, tactics, and tools with maybe a small percent of one or two tips on the legalities of self-defense, or one or two maybe casually mentioned, indicators or like road signs of violence, like, and that's a maybe. And yet here we are saying that these are in fact where everybody has to start. These four dominoes have to be knocked over. You have to solve these problems. And here's the thing. People know this even if they don't know they know this. Because there's many people that I've met that have phoned me, that have emailed me about training. And they ask all the questions, we answer. They come in, we meet, we talk, we chat. I've spent months off and on with people, like talking to them, answering questions, and what I used to spend a lot of time, trying to answer every question, but they don't even know what they need to ask. But there is a fear there. And the fear isn't just of like the physical training, because we do all private training. It's one-on-one. There is nobody else in your class. We train people individually and privately. So there is no fear of coming into this group situation and you go, I'm going to get hurt. The fear comes down to they're terrified that if they learn violence, they're going to get charged. Like nothing's even happened. They're just like, they're feared. This thing inside them is like, yeah, but you can't do this. If you did this, you're fucking going to go to jail. You're going to get fucking charged, man. Right? And being charged and being convicted are two totally different things, but it's an unfounded fear. It's not unfounded as in like it never happens. It is it's false evidence that appears very real. It's bigger than what it is, and you just need to face the realities of it. Do you get what I mean? Or they're terrified that they're going to make the mistake. Some guys are like, I got this bad temper. The only reason you have a temper is because you don't even understand when things are justified and not. You're just walking around reacting to everything. You have no self-control. Well, you think that you're safer walking around with no self-control, just trying to avoid stress situations? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so these four dominoes, we just attack them instantaneously. We just say, listen, let me solve this problem for you. And like I said, over the last few years, I've been putting together courses to do exactly that. And that's kind of where we'll wrap this up, is I said that I wanted to introduce the problems because we all have them. There's guys that are probably training with us right now that we are in the process. They have access to the courses. We are constantly, as we're teaching them, educating them, knocking, like we're making sure these dominoes don't just fall over. We're breaking these dominoes up. There is no chance of lifting these things back into place. We are shattering them into dust particles. Do you know what I mean? And to do that, to get it to that level, it takes time. But there's guys listening right now that will now go, I need to fucking revisit these courses. And I would say, yes, you do. How many times have you guys taken the courses that address these problems?
Over and over and over.
I don't have enough digits.
Yeah, once. Is it greater than 50 times? Is it greater than 100 times? Is it greater than 500 times? That's a big jump.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, we're in the thousands of times. And not just because we teach it. I study this stuff and listen to courses and read Barry's book or listen to a course, not once, not 50 times, not 100 times. It's like a reference guide that is always there. It sits on my desk. I'll take 15 minutes of my day and just reference and read sections and chapters. And then I'll go in and then I study case. Like, I mean, it's just like, but when you have somebody take the information, put it all into one place for you that you can just easily access, we do that over and over and over again. And that's what I want to make available to everybody. And so what you can do is, I wish that I had it a little more polished than I do right now, in the sense of like my ready to launch this, but it is ready to launch. I was working on it right up till we went live here. But I have made a bunch of new updates onto our website, and our website is awakentheprotectr.ca. So awakentheprotect with an R at the end of it, .ca. And if you click on that, you can head over there, and it's I've streamlined and simplified it. And you just scroll down. It's very short right now, then it's going to stay that way. But at the bottom of the webpage, it says that there are 4 steps that you can take to start weaponizing your mind and body, and they're all for free. And step number 1 is giving you access to free courses, to free training. Okay, I call it our Protector Free Line. And if you click on that step 1, you'll be taken to another web page that outlines the 4 dominoes and the courses that we offer people, the training that we provide to our members, to our clients, to solve each of these problems. And those are the courses that I just described to you guys. The workshop on speaking the language of violence, the No More Mr. Nice Guy, beyond the book. And you can also order a copy of the book if you don't already have one, or you can try to source it out at your local chapters or whatever, or you can get it through us. But the course is there. The Reading Aggression Right, 16 videos on how to read body language, interpersonal communication behavior, on intuition, on activating your radar. Our whole entire onboarding videos are all there, as well as our Bulletproof Mind complete mental toughness program, which is also, we call it the 5-Day Prime the Protector, but that is there. All of it is there. The workbooks, all of the resources are there. This is stuff that I have for the last how many years given exclusively to our clients, to our inner circle members, our highest tier clients. This has been part of their, packages, which they're paying thousands of dollars for to receive this type of one-on-one coaching and this type of training and this resources. And I wanted to make this free to everybody and anybody, because our goal, in all seriousness, is to help weaponize more and more good people, to help them rise regardless of the crisis or stress they may face in their life, but specifically to prepare to face violent criminal assaults, defend themselves and their families. And in order for us to be successful as an organization, and for anybody that would ever want to train with us or utilize our knowledge to train and weaponize themselves, right? These 4 dominoes have to come down. They have to come down. And waiting and only kind of offering this to just the people that make the commitment to join the weaponizing process, it seems like a slower way of doing it. And I genuinely want to add value to people. So I would you can go there right now, click on the website, see the 4 steps, click on step 1. It'll take you to the 4 programs. You'll see the 4 programs. You can click on it and opt in for free. It'll take you to our member. We have a special member site. All you do is create your own private. You put in your name and your email address. It's yours. That creates a member account, which opens you up to a student dashboard. Whatever program you registered for will then be on your student dashboard. So it's just, and you're in control of it's your membership site. It's your private link to it, and you have access to that. And that'll be on your member site. That'll be on your dashboard for now and to the day you die or cancel it or close it or whatever you'd have to do with it. There is zero fucking selling in this. There's no special offer at the end. There's no special offer in the front. There's no hoops to jump through. It's literally yours for free. And you can opt in for that course. And then if you go, I did that one, now I want to do course number 2, You just click on that opt-in. You'll already have a member site. You just go there, and it'll automatically add that course to your dashboard, and you can have all 4. You can start with whichever one interests you the most or whatever, but that is there for people. The links are not yet active because I'm just finishing the courses being uploaded into the member site for the free line are rendering. They are going to take, I would imagine, until sometime tomorrow. So you can go check it all out. You can look at it. You will not be able to actually click on the link to get the course and start it. Probably till I would think tomorrow around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I think things would be good to go. I was hoping to have it all set up so that people could go right now and start it right now, but you'll have to wait maybe 12 hours from now, something like that. So anyways, that is it. That's why I brought this up. I wanted to acknowledge it. We are now going to, every podcast at the end, it'll direct people to our free line. Again, I'm not trying to sell anybody shit. There's nothing to do with that. It is literally, these are the problems that keep men unweaponized, naive, weak, and harmless. And that is not good for anybody. Weaponized men need to be, we need to be formidable. We need to be dangerous. You need to be peaceable. But that becomes the choice you make when you have the capability to be a formidable man, right? Then you can choose peace. And, a weak man doesn't choose peace. He has no choice. And then he is at the mercy of everybody and anything else in his life. So anyways, does that kind of make sense? I know you guys, haven't really filled you in on everything we're doing, but now you know that we are launching those programs on our free line. And I think it's going to be a great thing for people to just, change the game in their lives. And if you do nothing else, knock these 4 dominoes down and you will be infinitely safer, simply because you're armed with this knowledge and understanding and this perception of the world. So, all right. Anything else or any questions? Is there anything that you guys maybe think I missed or need to talk about or want to say?
No, I don't think anything missed. I just think, again, to reiterate what you're saying, is it's a perfect and amazing opportunity for people to start the weaponizing process with zero barrier to entry. To increase your family's safety, your safety. It's a no-brainer, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm biased, but it's still a no-brainer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's zero risk. It doesn't cost you anything. There's no sales. It doesn't cost you anything. You just can go. You take them. You have access. You can. It's on your time frame. Go through it. They're there on your dashboard for the rest of your life. And but all I can say is utilize it. Go through it. You know what I mean? Take advantage of it because it'll change the game. Dustin, anything on your end?
Yeah, knowledge is power, and this knowledge is there. It's free. So yeah, I mean, go get it, learn it.
Yep.
Yeah, make yourself infinitely safer.
100%. Okay. Having said that, guys, again, awakentheprotector.ca. You can check out the website. Like I said, the links to the free course will be active tomorrow around 3-4 o'clock, I would think, maybe earlier. But please head over there, check it out, and hope you see you inside the courses at some point. I hope you take advantage of it. So that is it. We don't have an exit on this podcast because I'm creating the new one that will help direct people in the future to our free courses and free training, the 4 steps that we can do to help them weaponize. All this new content is being released. So we're just going to end it here. Thank you, guys. Dustin, thanks, Brad. I appreciate it as always, your time, your energy, helping weaponize people, educate people. And this was our 40th episode. We have done way before. We had the Awaken the Protector Within podcast that was going before this, that we kind of stopped and kind of restarted with the education of a weaponized man. But we've done well over 40 podcasts. But congratulations to 40 on this one. Appreciate you guys. And I can't wait for the next 400. So that's it, guys. Have a great night, everybody. Stay safe, stay weaponized. We will chat again soon. Thanks for joining and commenting, everybody. Appreciate it.